for the people who doesn't know who Alex Rogers is, who is Alex, and what can you tell me about your activism and business?
Sure, I'll be as quick as possible, but I started out as an activist in the early 90s in Northern California, and I worked with Jack Hare and Ed Rosenthal and Dennis Perrone and Debbie Goldsberry, and this was all before they legalized medical marijuana in California. We call it pre-215, and that's where I cut my teeth. That's where they were very formative years. And then I kind of went out of activism for a while, and I moved to Europe. And I lived in Europe for about 8 years.
In Slovenia?
Actually, I lived all over. I lived in Holland, Germany, Switzerland, and France. And then my favorite country that I lived in was Slovenia, where I met my wife about 11 years ago in a little town called Piran, and I lived in Slovenia for 2.5 years, and then about 8.5 years ago I moved back to the States. I actually went to prison in Germany for a half year.
Really? Because of cannabis?
For cannabis, yes. And then when I got out, I was like, fuck this, I'm going to change the world. I got a real taste of what it's like to be locked up and the horrors of being in prison. And I decided I wouldn't break the laws anymore, that I would change the laws. And I went home. I graduated in my university with high honors. We call it magna cum laude in political science. And then I started a medical marijuana clinic in Oregon, which is now we see over 5,000 patients a year now. We're about the third largest in the state. And then what I did after that was I started these series of conferences. I'm the owner and CEO of the clinics, but I'm also the owner and CEO of the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference. And then our biggest achievement is the International Cannabis Business Conference.
Okay, before we start talk about ICBC, you said I read somewhere that Jack Hare was your tutor, your mentor. So can you tell me a little bit about working with Jack Hare?
Sure. I met Jack in 1993 in Santa Cruz, California. I was about 22 years old, and it was amazing. I'm born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I always liked smoking pot, but I didn't know that it was good for as many things that it is good for. And so when I met Jack, he actually then hired me to be his Northern California signature gatherer for his California Hemp Initiative, which has never qualified on the ballot before. But it is the best initiative. It treats cannabis just like wine, and it ends all criminal penalties towards cannabis. So one thing, Jack was a very intense individual, and rest in peace. He's been gone from us for about 4 or 5 years now, and he was very intense, and I didn't know quite what to think of him back then. I did have a lot of respect for him. I knew what he was saying was partially true, but I didn't know how true. He said hemp could save the planet. He said, and let's end all criminal penalties and not make it a commerce-based legalization. And what's happening now, Mislav, is that we always thought we were pushing cannabis to be. We thought it would be legalized because of the human rights aspect, because of the civil liberties aspect of it.
But it was because of the business, right?
Well, that's what happened. Exactly. When the recession happened in the United States about 8 years ago, the activists found this an opportunity to push forward legalization because each respective community needed the tax base. What we forgot is that we forgot the human rights aspect of it. So, for example, Colorado has legal pot, kind of. If you're selling pot in Colorado and you don't have a license from the state, it's still a felony. And a felony is the highest form of a crime in America. That's what we call it, a felony. And so you're still a criminal if you're selling pot. Well, what we want to do is, and it's still a first good step, that you can get a license, it's legal for personal use, it's a great first step. But we can't forget, and so Jack was saying all these things to me 20 years ago. I kind of thought he was a little bit off, you know, but history has proven that Jack was right about everything, and he kind of prophesized almost what would happen, and now that's all happening. And so instead of ending criminal penalties towards cannabis, America is legalizing it only under the auspices of business and commerce. And it's a great first step. It means a lot. It takes a lot of wind out of the law enforcement sails. But just like what Jack has taught me is we have to fight to end all criminal penalties towards cannabis. So, for example, if you're selling cannabis and you don't have a license from the state, that could be a civil penalty. In the United States, we have criminal penalties and civil penalties. I'm sure it's the same in Hrvatska tudi. But the point is if you're not doing what the government says you're doing, it's not a crime. It could be a fine. You'd have to pay a little money, but you're not going to go to jail. And those are the types of things that we fight for.
Okay, tell me a little bit about differences between business and activism. Some people say only activism is good because business, especially a big cannabis business, will ruin small people chance to have some money and chance to earn something from their cannabis. Is that true?
I think that's not really true. The only way it's only true if the laws only allow for, let's say you legalize cannabis in Iowa, okay? Or for example in Minnesota, my home state, they just legalized medical marijuana. It's a shit law because they only allowed 2 people to produce the cannabis, okay? When the laws are prohibitive, then it's a bad thing. But most laws that we see on the books for Colorado or Oregon right now allow for small, we say mom and pop businesses, small businesses to thrive. And also, we're Americans. We have and we're West Coast people. We have a strong libertarian streak. So if a big business, if Marvel wants to grow 10,000 hectares of shitty weed, I don't care because I'm not going to smoke it. As long as the laws allow for small production farms, then everything's going to be okay because ultimately the people decide the free market.
And it's important for the patients to grow their own. Not maybe it's good for the country or for the state to grow for the patients, but the part of the healing process is to see, to watch, and to be part of the growing of a plant.
That's right. And so we don't support any legalization measures that don't allow for home gardens. Oregon just legalized. Everybody can now have 4 plants. That's not a lot, but it's a start. So you need this variety with cannabis. You can't just have these simple 1 or 2 growers or 1 or 2 varieties. You need a multitude of varieties. You need to allow the people to grow it, and that's what real freedom is. So I don't care if business gets into this as long as the laws on the book say that every individual can grow if they want to and allow for small farm production also. And that's very important.
So there is a lot of work to be done in a further time in the process of legalization and civil liberties. But one part of your activism is organizing the International Cannabis Business Conference that took part in San Francisco a few days ago. So please tell me a little bit about this conference, who attended, what topics were discussed and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, it was a very successful conference. One of the reasons we're successful, there seems to be a lot of these conferences popping up, but one of the reasons that we're successful is because it's a 2-day conference, and we dedicate the entire first day to politics, advocacy, and activism, because we feel that if you're going to be, Okay, so here's the deal, Mislav. When I was with Jack Hare and Dennis Perone 20 years ago and Debbie Goldsberry, and we had signs on the street that said legalize weed, hemp will save the planet, people were laughing at us. Well, nobody's laughing at us anymore. We also thought that when marijuana would be legal, we thought the whole world was going to be different. We thought it was going to be like Star Trek: The Next Generation up in here. You know what I mean? It was a utopia land if cannabis would be legal. So, we were young and we were idealistic and we were stupid, but we were passionate. And what's happened is cannabis is becoming legal, and it is being usurped by some type of big business. It is being, people from other areas of business that you would never expect are coming into the cannabis field with the same attitude of, it's just this typical American capitalist attitude, which is very structural, which means somebody has to win, that means somebody has to lose. Well, we're more of the ilk that the cannabis revolution is a cultural revolution, and we're pushing this just to be, go ahead, do business, make money, that's great, but be a little bit more conscious. Be a little bit more conscious of how you do business, how you treat people, and how you view money. Everybody needs money and wants money. But if it becomes the sole most important thing in your life, which it is, which is a pervasive narrative for American business, then we really, it's just not right. It's just not socially responsible. So by legalizing cannabis and having cannabis business, we want to make sure that people are still socially, or even more so, socially responsible. So rather than cannabis being usurped by big business, we want the cannabis industry to help change the idea of how one does business. And it makes sense, because when you use cannabis, money is not your guide. You smoke cannabis, you have a little bit more spiritual acuity and understand that there's bigger, money's important, but it's not the most important thing.
Yes. Please tell me.
And as for the speakers, Mislav, we had Rick Steves. He's the most famous European travel TV show host and author in the world. He's a very famous person in America, and a lot of people are surprised when they hear he's for legalization. We also had a Republican Congressman, Dana Rohrabacher, speak against the drug war. We think all drugs should be legalized and regulated. The drug war is a failure. So it's not just about cannabis, it's about an underlying public policy that has been a failed policy for 70 years and has to change immediately. We also had a surprise guest, Mislav. We had the sheriff, that's the top cop of San Francisco County, come and asked to speak to the people. And he did. And he spoke how the drug war is a failure. And he also spoke about how we do not need more jails and we have to reevaluate what it means to incarcerate people and rehabilitate them. So when you have the top European travel host and one of the top congressmen in the United States and the sheriff of San Francisco County coming to speak, that things are changing.
Cool. Some other topics and some other, I would say, things that is going on the ICBC is there. That's a place for young entrepreneurs to learn, to make contacts, and to basically know what does cannabis business mean. So what can entrepreneurs expect in further years, and what did they learn in this year?
Okay, so another reason we do all the politics and advocacy is because we believe if you want to be a successful person in the cannabis industry, you need to know this stuff, okay? The suits are now meeting the hippies out here, right? And the hippies, or the heads as we call them, they can smell a suit from a mile away. They don't talk right, they don't speak right, they don't use the right words. In fact, they might misspeak at times. We feel it's so important to understand the politics and advocacy and culture of cannabis if you're going to be a successful business person. That being said, our second day was dedicated purely to business. So what does it mean? What does it mean? What does cannabis mean? You see, in the cannabis realm, it's still federally illegal in America. Therefore, you can't write off payroll and normal cost of doing business on your taxes. You can't advertise on TV. You can't have a bank account. You must do all cash accounting.
That's important topic.
There's a lot of prohibitive things going on in the cannabis industry. So if you come from some other industry and you think you're going to use your normal analogy of doing business in the cannabis realm, you're wrong. And so we teach people about these nuances of the industry that one must know, and then how to navigate around those nuances to be successful and not have your time wasted. So we get right to it. We tell people about cash accounting. We tell people how to run a dispensary and what you need to do for your cash accounting, how you can write off your other ways you can write off your taxes, kind of ways around it that are still legal. What banks do take your money, of the few that do, who are the ones. It just goes on and on and on what we teach people, and it's really important because it's a mess right now. Until the federal government of the United States reschedules cannabis, it's going to be a mess. So there's a lot of money to be made in this industry, but it's still underground, and we're bringing it above ground and teaching people how to do that, because a lot of people have been in this business for a long time, have been underground, and they're tired of being looked at as criminals, and they want to come out of the proverbial closet. And so that's what they're doing now, is these old school outlaws. They're tired of being outlaws. They're tired of being looked at as a criminal. They have families, right? So they're coming to these conferences and realizing what they could do to have a real legitimate legal business in the cannabis field. And we had almost 1,000 people there this weekend.
Okay, because we have like 5 more minutes, I just want to be quick with the questions. So tell me, what are the next things that USA is going to face in cannabis legalization?
We're going to see California legalize in 2016, and when California legalizes in 2016, it's done. The world will fall, and we want to come, and then the federal government will allow you to write off taxes, and banking will start to happen, because you see the money's coming, and everybody wants the money. So we were hoping that human rights and compassion would push this issue forward, but it's the money. And that's fine. Whatever it takes, that's fine. But cannabis will be legalized in probably 25 states in America within 5 to 7 years, and it could be legalized federally within the same time. So this is the fastest growing industry in America, in the United States right now.
It's important not only for cannabis to be legalized for business or for medical use. It's important for some people to be legalized for spiritual use. So what do you think about the spirituality and cannabis?
Oh, I don't really care. I think if you're a recreational user, that's all that matters to me. And, spiritual versus recreational is very subjective. And I don't care. I think it should just all be legalized and decriminalized. And if you want to use it for medical, fine. If you want to use it for recreational, fine. If you want to use it for spiritual, whatever you want to use it for, you just go ahead. One can just go ahead and use it for that. It's all equalized because it's been completely decriminalized. It's my dream to have it treated like valerian root or any other herb that you could buy, that's in the apotheca that you might go to. So it's that benign, it's that non-toxic. It's like tomatoes or chocolate to me. So whatever one wants to use it for, I don't care. I think it should all be legalized the same for everybody, regardless of what your use is.
Okay, and for the last question, as a person who is involved in legalizing cannabis, what is your message to the people in Croatia and Europe?
My message is that don't be pessimistic. You talk to a lot of people. Some people say, Slovenia is more liberal than Croatia. Croatia is a little bit more conservative with their cannabis laws. And so a lot of people don't think it'll ever be legal. And, it's never going to be legal here. Well, you're wrong. It will be legal there. So everybody needs to be positive and just start working towards that goal and have a little bit of faith that it actually will happen. Because the irony is that America is the first to do this. It's a tremendous irony. But however America goes, the world goes, okay? And so we have some information that Europe will start to legalize in 2016.
Yes, in 2015, this year, I think, everybody thinks because of some positive changes in our country, in political, meaning we're going to legalize in medicinal use right here in Croatia, but there is a debate if we want to use like Sativex, or we will allow for patients to grow plants. So this is a little bit...
Right, and so I would just tell people to always push for the whole medicine, individual growers, people's rights. Cannabis, it's everybody's right to grow and use cannabis. So I would just suggest don't make it Sativex. Have that an option, but we don't need this to be a pharmaceutical. We just need to grow it properly and then test it properly. Have all privateers, individual privateers make the medicine, and then the government can regulate it once the privateers grow it. Do not get the government in this business. Let the people run the business and the government just regulate it. Don't have the government ever grow this shit, man, or it'll be fucked up. You have to keep it in the people's hands, and that's for a multitude of reasons. And we will bring the International Cannabis Business Conference to Berlin, May 2016. And so people can look out for that also.